Welcome to the Frontline with FPM, where we talk about California politics, homeschool freedom, parental rights, and the family. I'm your host, Nathan Pierce, and thanks for joining us today. Let's jump right in and see what's going on here on the Frontline. All right. Well, for our special guest today, we have Jennifer Avila, who is our Advocate of the Year, and I'm really excited that she could join us today. Thank you for joining us, Jennifer.
Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate it.
I'm really looking forward to a couple of things. Some is your just your stories about some of your experiences, but also just sort of some of the benefits that you have personally had from getting involved in advocacy and getting to build relationships with legislators. So let's jump right in. I know we have a few ideas to guide us in our conversation. So I just wanted to start with, how long have you been homeschooling yourself?
I've been homeschooling since 2016, from the very beginning with my oldest child.
Okay. And how many kids do you have?
I have three, 11,
Okay.
9, and 6.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
And you have gotten them involved somewhat in advocacy. I know I've met them before at various things. How has that been? Have they all been involved in visits or whatever advocacy that you've done?
Yes, they've all been, although my oldest two have been more involved than my youngest.
Okay.
My youngest
Okay.
has been to 2 district visits.
Okay. Great. So when you were, homeschooling and just doing your regular daily stuff, what was it that triggered you to start getting involved in advocacy? What was it, something in particular, or was it sort of a general thing?
It's 2 things, I guess. One is in general. I've just always been someone that likes to help and involve. And when I started learning about Family Protection Ministries and what your values are and your mission, I just knew that it was a pretty big mission. And I knew it was something that Family Protection Ministries just obviously can't do everything on their own. They need the help of homeschool families. And I felt called by the Lord to get involved. And again, and another issue was in 2018, I was only in my second year of homeschooling, and that's when the Turpin family case became public.
Right.
And after watching the news, the media, I knew it was going to put homeschooling in the limelight and in a negative light.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, it didn't take long before we started hearing rumors of things. And then your organization was sending out the alerts to make the calls and write letters and stuff. So I went to the Capitol in 2018.
Okay.
And I spoke. I think I was the 6th or 7th person in line.
Okay.
So I sat there through the whole
Yeah.
thing, listening to everybody. So it was a really eye-opening and a wonderful experience watching how the legislative stuff works.
Uh-huh.
And how hearings work. And it was really nice to see all these homeschooling families from all over the state coming together in unison to say our piece about the bill and why we were not in favor of it.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like the springboard of, okay, well, I need to stay involved to help prevent anything to occur again as much as I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say definitely the Turpin family case was the biggest event.
Okay. Yeah, that sort of changed a little bit about a couple of the things that we do. Also was that case in the legislation that year, because that was when we really started pushing for doing district office visits, which is something that you've also been involved with, because like you said, it has put homeschooling more in the limelight than we were prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think after that, in 2020, we had sort of a big boom in homeschooling also. So those two things working together kind of changed things to make it, like you said, more in the limelight. And so and more people are involved in it, so there's more opportunity for people to see homeschooling and what it is. And so I think that those two things working together mean that it's more important for us to get involved in advocacy. One, because it is more in the limelight, but also because there's more at stake now with more people involved in it. So there's more kids, relying on this.
Yeah, I have a few neighbors that continued homeschooling after COVID.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's been interesting to see how a bunch of people thought, well, I'm just gonna do it for right now, and then decided, this is actually good for my family. I'm gonna stick with this.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So when, if you remember, when was your first district visit, and what was that like?
It was in 2019. Yeah,
Okay.
2019. It was very nerve-wracking because you don't know what to expect. So yes, I was nervous and I was a little hesitant to go through with it.
Uh-huh.
My story is actually pretty interesting because I know sometimes people, like you said, are hesitant of doing them just because it's not their thing. They're not used to it. And after I went in and I met with the legislator and I talked with him for actually it was an aide, I'm sorry, it was a legislator for about 20 minutes. Then he told me that, well, you know what? It was very interesting and I learned a lot of things, but you should actually be speaking to your state representative because I'm your federal representative.
Right.
So I was talking all this stuff and it was the wrong person.
Still somebody that should be educated about homeschooling.
Yeah, and he did have a lot of questions, and that actually did lead to my federal representative requesting a letter of introduction from me, and he wanted me to introduce myself and talk more about homeschooling. So I did that. Nothing came of it, but it was just nice that he wanted to know more.
Yeah, that's great.
He ended up introducing me to the field rep for my state representative after that. And so I met with her and we talked briefly. She didn't have a lot of time, but we talked briefly. And then it turned out, a year, 2 years later, that person I spoke with ended up becoming who is now my current representative.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And she remembered me from 2 years prior when we met briefly. Wow. When I spoke to the wrong representative. And so when I met with her a couple of years ago, she's like, don't I know you from somewhere? I was like, yeah, I was the one that spoke to you. So it was nice that she remembered me.
Yeah.
And so I kept in touch with her once she won the election for my district, and I was happy that it was somebody that I knew that was now representing me.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was how the whole first district visit went, which was it was interesting.
Yeah. So let me just make sure I have this straight. You met with after going to your federal legislator, you went to the field representative for your state legislator, and that field representative eventually became an elected official.
Yes, exactly.
And you had a relationship with them based on when they were a field representative.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, that is amazing. I love that.
Yeah,
that story.
I thought it was so amazing. It was interesting. I was like, wow, a strange turn of events,
Yeah, that's incredible.
So it made it easier to lead to other district visits.
Yeah. Okay. So what have been your experiences with other district visits since then?
Let's see. I've done maybe 5.
Okay.
I think 5, and I have another one next week. I have 2 next week.
Okay.
So the other district visits, I've been blessed to where my representatives have been Republican, so they've been pretty easy.
Okay.
So I guess it made for good practice because I know because of the redistricting, my representatives will be changing and I will now be put into a Democratic state senator and assembly member. So I guess it was good practice because everyone I've met with has been so friendly and very pro school choice, pro homeschooling, never really had anything negative to say. Very appreciative of the information in the packet.
Okay.
and for taking the time to drive out there and to sit and discuss things
Okay.
and sharing the experiences. And above all, like you've mentioned at Capitol Day a couple of times, their favorite part actually is seeing kids.
Yeah.
They just, a lot of them, they light up, and people get a little kind of more like I don't know, they come down more to the kids level, in their
Yeah.
personality. So yeah, and then the kids, their personality shine, and they're friendly and polite. And so yeah, so it's really been interesting and rewarding experience, and it hasn't been scary.
Yeah. Would you say that bringing your kids with you maybe helps break down barriers a little bit and helps loosen up the conversation?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Okay.
It does, because they tend to ask questions about the kids, and then I've talked to my kids about how to answer questions, because my kids sometimes, how kids are, sometimes they say silly things. Like one
Yep.
time, one district visit, my youngest, my 9-year-old, back then when she was 6 or 7, and she was asked what's her favorite part of school, and she said lunchtime.
I
So,
love it.
so it brought a laugh into the room, but
Yeah.
mine, I'm like, I don't think that's exactly what she was asking for. Just little things like that. I just try
Yeah.
to make sure my kids know kind of what to say and what not, what to avoid to say if they can.
Right.
Yes, bringing kids definitely helps break down the barriers. And I will actually say, from my personal experience, I think it's less intimidating when you're meeting with a field rep or an aide, a staff member, versus the actual senator or the assembly member themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
So me personally, when I'm coordinating meetings, I would rather meet with a staffer or a legislative aide, because it's less intimidating.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So when you're doing these visits, you mentioned the packet. I was just wondering, in terms of using the packet in your visits, do you mentioned they're appreciative of receiving the information.
Mhm.
When you have these visits, do you engage with them in the materials in the packet, or is it more of just a tool that you hand them and they say, okay, thanks for that, let's have a conversation with the kids, kind of a thing? Or how does that go? How does the packet play into your visits?
Well, I present the packet and I open it and I give them a brief overview of what each flyer or each paper represents. Of course, I don't go into full detail. I just give them a brief over. This is what this is, and this side is more statistics and research. And I list the organizations that create them, and I just give them a brief overview. And sometimes it leads to questions, but most of the time they're just very thankful, and they don't have the time to actually obviously read it right there and then, so they tend to not have questions immediately. I did have someone email me one time, an aide, just to a question out of my own personal experience based on the information that he read at a later date. So, but I do try to engage with them, and I open it and I show them the different individual pieces that are within the packet. I don't want to just throw it at them and say, here's a packet,
Yeah,
later, kind of a thing.
yeah, yeah. So would you say that it helps maybe to have something to, I'm trying to think of people that have never done a district office visit before, never visited their legislator. Would you say that it's something that kind of can make it a little bit easier, because you're bringing something in that you can show them, and it kind of can steer at least the initial part of the conversation?
Yes, it definitely is helpful, because you're not just going out on a whim.
Yeah.
What's in your mind? It's kind of like, I guess, to me, it's like an outline of what you can discuss. And if they have questions, they can ask for each individual piece. My most recent district visit I did last week, it was with a field representative. He didn't have any, he had a little idea of how private homeschooling worked, but he didn't know the legal aspect of how it was done. So he immediately was drawn to that page, the overview of how the education code is.
Yeah.
And he was very much interested in the state specific study because he was curious about that actually too. And that answered his questions right away. And he opened it and he immediately said, oh, well, yeah, I can see that private homeschoolers do well in standardized tests. It's right there in a graph. So it's definitely something that is a very, very useful tool with district visits.
Okay, great, excellent. Well, that's really helpful. So you've done a number of visits, and would you say that, how would you say your kids, do they like going to these district visits?
They do actually. They do. They just like to get out of school for the day. No, I'm just kidding. No, they look forward to it because they're people, they like to engage with other people. And they like to speak to other adults and share what they love about homeschooling. They like to share fun experiences that they've had that they wouldn't have otherwise had they been in a public school setting. One, for instance, we had my oldest son was into planes, so we went to an airport. We went to Ontario Airport. This was years ago, to just go look at planes. It happened to be kind of gloomy, so we just went inside so he could see how an airport operated inside, and we ended up being drafted into a movie.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh my goodness.
No plans for that. We were drafted into a movie. We were in a small scene with Matt Damon. But if they were in public school, because this is like at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, we wouldn't have been there in the first place. So it's just weird how it's just amazing how the different experiences you're exposed to. So they got to experience what it was like to be on a set, the craft service with all the snacks. Another thing, so they like to share that with legislators. They like to share how they've met certain political figures that are current right now. What else? Oh, and my oldest son likes to share how he won a blue ribbon at the LA County Fair for his writing paper that he submitted. Okay. And of course, the writing is based on his love of writing and how we work on those things here in school, in our homeschool. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, it's always a joy to see your kids and chat with them when they come to events and things. So tell me about your sort of experiences in building relationships with legislators. This is something we've talked about before, but tell us about how your experience has been with, you mentioned the one individual that was a field rep and is now your representative. You have other stories like that, so I'm excited to hear more about that part too.
Okay, so my current legislator, like I said, was the field rep in 2019, and so it made that meeting go all the more smoother because we were already familiar with each other. When I met with her, she was very engaging, asking questions about the different things in the packet, asking what we do. And then she's been so pleasant that if I needed any help, she gave me her personal phone, as well as her aide's phone. So if I ever needed anything, to go ahead and contact them. And then we communicate, we go to their town hall meetings because we don't want to be like, we only contact you when we need something.
Right.
So I try to go to their town halls when they have them locally to just be engaged that way. And that relationship has been more like a friendship, and it led to a very helpful they lent their help in a very tragic situation I had last year with my family. Last year we had a sudden death in our family, but prior to the death, my brother-in-law was in the hospital in a coma, and it was on a weekend. And we have another family member, his brother, who is up north in, unfortunately, in one of the state prison facilities. And I wanted him to have a phone call with his brother before he passed away, because we didn't know how long he was going to be there. And I called the prison and asked for the appropriate person to speak to, but that person was out of the office and no one could tell me when she was going to be back. And so I just thought of, well, I'll contact my representative and see if she has the name of somebody that I can call and specifically ask for to talk to try to get this to happen. And so I texted my senator, and she immediately texted back and said, I'll have someone from my office contact you. So her aide called me right away, got the information. I gave him the information he needed. And then he said, well, let me reach out and I'll out to our contacts at the Department of Corrections and I'll get right back to you. Well, I found out with like an hour later, my husband texted me and say, hey, the phone call just happened. So thank you for that. And it's like, he didn't even call collect. It was like he was calling from an office number.
Wow.
So it really was touching how they were able to help to make that happen, because the brother that was in the coma ended up passing away 2 days later. And then when the Department of Corrections got back to me, my brother had already passed away, my brother-in-law.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see how this worked, because had it not been for my advocacy in homeschool and building these relationships with my legislator and her staff, that I wouldn't have been able to get the help that I needed during that situation.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your tragic situation, the death in your family. And
thank you.
That's hard, but I'm also really encouraged that there was help to make that phone call happen. And not everybody's going to have the cell number of their legislator, but you
Right.
wouldn't have had it either if it hadn't been for building that relationship. So
yeah, and it really helped too to cement the idea that they are people, like we hear at Capitol Day. They're people with families, and that they really do care. That it's not just all about business. It's not all about legislation. Yeah. So that really helped. Like I said, it cemented that in my mind and my children's minds, that they're caring people too. Maybe not all of them are that nice, but I mean, they all have families and they all understand, and they really do try to help you when you need help.
Right. Yeah. In a situation like that, they can sympathize because they're actual people. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one way. So that's the best relationship that I have right now with my current legislator. And the one I had last week with the aide, I'm hoping that one will progress into something similar. Mm-hmm. Maybe not to that high of a level, but yeah. I'm hoping it'll develop into that as well. Because they are nice. It's not as scary as it thinks. And some of them are really funny too.
Yeah.
Some of them have some good humor. So yeah. So yeah. I'm enjoying it. And plus I get to see how their offices work, who's who I need to talk to. Most of the time I meet with the educational aides, the ones that deal with the education legislation. And there was something else I was going to say and I can't remember. It slipped my mind now. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. So if you were going to, if you had one piece of advice for a new person that's maybe considering getting involved right now, but still maybe nervous, what bit of encouragement would you give to them? I know you've given a lot already, it seems like, but do you have any other thoughts?
What's that saying? Just do it.
Yeah.
I think for me, the easiest way is, if you're nervous, I think the best first step is to try communicating via email. It's less intimidating. There's no face-to-face. And a lot of the times I think they prefer email because it's quicker. People usually have their phones and they can respond right away rather than trying to talk to somebody. And then it kind of starts developing, developing a rapport with that person.
Yeah.
And so I think email is the easiest first step that a new person, a new family could make. And then try to take the next step of making the phone call and talking to somebody. You know what helped me too, the first couple of times I did my district visit, I just remembered, I wrote like a little script on Microsoft Word. And so when the person got on the phone, I just read my little script. So I didn't have to think about anything. And it made it go a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah, I can totally relate to that being helpful. Things that you're not sure exactly how things are going to be responded to. You might freeze up in the moment. It's always nice to have something written out, even if you know right now exactly what that ought to be. It's always a good idea to write it out and have it ready to fall back on if you need it. So
yeah, it does help. And then I had like another script for like if they're not receptive versus if they're receptive, I knew which route to go, and I didn't
that's
have
a great idea. Yeah.
to think about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and
That's
then
good.
it gets easier as you get one or two under your belt. It
Mhm.
gets easier. Of course, I don't know if my experience is going to get a little more difficult now that I'm going to be heading into the Democratic arena.
Uh-huh.
But my first visit with a Democratic, my assemblyman last week, went very well with his
Yeah.
legislative aide. He was very open, very kind and warm and welcoming, and we had a friendly conversation. And he hoped that I would actually come back to maybe hopefully meet with the assembly member.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. That sounds like a positive response. That's good.
Yeah, it was a very positive response. And now it's like I stated earlier, that I know it's a lot of work for Family Protection Ministries to do on their own. And you had stated it in you and Drew, I believe, in a conversation about how you two could actually go and visit all the state district offices on your own, even though it's really impossible because that's way too much time
Right.
consuming and trying, but it wouldn't make the same impact as the actual constituent.
Right. Yeah.
And but I realized too, since I've been blessed to be home with my children and homeschool, and we have the time, that I've been branching out to try to help visit other district offices that are local to me, just because I can do it. And it's actually, like I said, it's been getting easier.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
able to make the phone calls now, not even the emails. I'm able to just make the call and ask. It's like second nature now.
Well, that's great. So it does get easier as you have more practice doing it. And
Yeah, it does.
and you've been to Capitol Day as well
Yes.
and done visits at the Capitol. How would you describe the different visits, the visits at the Capitol versus the district office? Are they the same or different? How would you describe that?
I think they're different. They're a little bit more intimidating
At the Capitol?
at the Capitol than they
Uh-huh.
are at the district, because you've stated it many times, I think on the podcast and also at Capitol Day, where the Capitol, like you stated, they're all concerned with legislation. Everyone seems kind of tense for the most part, whereas at the district, it is very more relaxed and chilled. It's not as chaotic. And the people, the people are different. They're not worried with the legislation as much, and they're more into serving the district and the people that are in it. Capitol Day definitely was different in 2020 versus this year, because the annex was a lot easier to navigate than the actual Capitol was.
Yeah.
But I think it's, for me, Capitol Day, it's more of, are we actually going to see the assembly member? So it kind of, it brings on that whole kind of nervousness a little bit. But it is nice if an assembly member or a state senator can pop their head out at the Capitol. But yeah, there is a difference. But then now that I've done it twice, this last one we just did, this Capitol Day, it really wasn't as nerve-wracking. But I think my district visits help with the confidence and demeanor that I present, because I did all the talking for my group.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I wanted them to give it a try, but they were too nervous about it. So I took the lead, but yeah, it's kind of just, the district visits are a excellent practice for the Capitol date visits.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good point. That's a really excellent point for people to be aware of, that it's a little less intimidating at a district office. And would you say it's a little bit more in terms of the context of the office, the tone maybe of the office, is that you mentioned they care more about the people in the district at the district office. Would you say they were a little more welcoming at a district office than at the Capitol office?
Yes, I get that feeling when you're at the district office. They're very more open and welcoming. I don't know if it's because of maybe the stress at the Capitol, because everything's about meetings, and especially if legislation's in session, and the committee hearings and all those different things. Whereas at the district office, it's can we serve you? What do you need help with? Capitol office, when we go in for Capitol Day, we're pretty much only speaking to the receptionists.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no one can talk to you. Everyone's busy. So it's a treat when you do get to speak to somebody at the Capitol, impromptu like that, spontaneously. But it's definitely harder to come. It's harder to meet with somebody at the Capitol Day unless you have an appointment, is what we tend to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and if sometimes you feel like you're kind of being rushed out at the Capitol,
right?
Like, give us what you need, and that's it.
Yep.
So yeah, district office is definitely more welcoming, in my opinion, from my experience.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that is really helpful, and all of this has been helpful, and it's been very encouraging to me just to hear the stories. It's really a blessing just to hear your experiences doing district office visits and being at Capitol Day. A lot of those things just seem like a whirlwind to me most of the time. I get to the end of Capitol Day and it just seems like, wow, that happened so fast. But it's really encouraging to hear from your perspective how those things went, and also the district visits, how that goes, and that it's not really that hard for somebody new to jump in and just take that first step. And like you said, the hardest part is just to say, yep, I'm just going to do it. And so hopefully this will be an encouragement to others. If you are nervous about doing it, just pray and ask God for wisdom and for the encouragement to press on to the next step, of whether that's sending that email or making the phone call, like Jennifer said. And I think that can really be the turning point in overcoming that fear, and remembering that these folks they're people, and they do need to hear from us.
Yep. So here's another tip too that I realized too that might help. Maybe if someone's nervous or on the fence about doing it, is look at your legislator's website and look for town hall meetings that they might be doing locally, and go to a town hall meeting, and then you can meet them because you're with a bunch of group of other people that are there, and usually they have an aide or their staffers there too to help them. And then you can introduce yourself that way when you're not really there to speak to them about anything. It's just to see what they're trying to talk about, to let their district know about what's going on in their district. So that might make it easier, because break the ice. You're going to meet them and then you leave. You're not talking about anything. And then maybe that will help be a springboard to emailing, saying, okay, now I can email or call and make an appointment to try to do my district visit.
Right, because this town hall is more like the spotlight isn't on just you.
Right.
You're there with a bunch of people, like you said, and you can just go up and meet them in a more casual setting.
Yeah, exactly. So that might be another way to get into the district visit.
That's a great idea, because in a sense, at a town hall meeting, you're basically, if you live in that district, you're invited.
Yeah, exactly. And you're with your neighbors, you're with other people that want to bring up issues and talk about things.
Right.
But yeah, I just feel it's really important, because if we're not going to fight, then who is going to fight for And we don't want to, like in 2018 with the whole Medina thing with the Turpin case, we don't want to just all come together when something's happening.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
We want to prevent that kind of a thing from happening again.
Right. And our legislators would prefer it where we are talking to them and building those relationships and giving them the information they need before a crisis happens. They prefer that too. So yeah, that's true. It is beneficial to everybody if we can build those relationships now when there's nothing bad happening.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So yeah, just like what we saw, everyone coming together in 2018 for the education hearing. That's what I would hope. That's my vision for how people can come together to do the district office visits.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
That would be nice. That would
Yes.
be really nice to have everybody. And you even stated in the advocacy book that we get about you need homeschool families to participate. And that's what our civic duty is too.
That's right. That's right.
So
Well,
that's trying to do and trying to teach our kids to get involved.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And they can get involved in so many ways, including participating in district visits. And maybe your son will get involved with writing in some way that can help communicate important things to legislators and to society, because that's needed as well.
Yep. Oh, one other story I forgot to mention. On Capitol Day in 2020, when I was there with Joshua, he loved meeting our representative, and they were so fun, and that they took his picture with him shaking hands with his representative, and then they posted it on Facebook.
Okay.
So little things like that really make it fun. Fun for my kids, fun memories for my little things like that. So
that is great. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because like you said, again, they love seeing the kids come in. It's this extra thing that can really make their day. I've had staffers tell me at the Capitol before, oh, Capitol Day, yeah, that was the highlight of my year, because kids came in and everybody was smiling instead of grumbling.
And one more thing that came to mind right now with my meeting last week with my assemblyman's aide. Again, something you've stated at Capitol Day, which is totally true. The person I met with, when he sat down and after like a few minutes of speaking, he was like, wow, this meeting was so different. I wasn't expecting this. You actually don't want anything. It's actually, yes. You're not mad, and you're not yelling at me, and you're not asking me for anything. This is a really nice break from the usual. So yeah, no, this is really nice. So thank you.
Well, that's great. That's another good encouragement to people that might be on the fence about just visiting their district office. That you can really make a positive impression, and it's not that hard to do, because all you gotta say is, here, this is the packet, and we just want to chat, and we're not mad, and we don't want to ask for anything.
Exactly. That's it. Most of the time, though, I would say the top question we get though is there any legislation currently going on that will affect homeschooling?
Yeah.
That's the number one question I get. Of course, my answer is usually no, but then I refer them to you.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad they're asking that question, because we want them to be ready and willing to hear from us when there is something that's concerning. So that's really good.
Another thing too he mentioned was that he was very impressed with the knowledge that my children and I had, because we knew who his predecessor was, and the district. So those are all nice things to help you, do a little bit of research.
Yeah.
Just so it kind of, I think, builds more of a professionalism, I guess, because they realize you are invested and you are trying to be engaged and know what's going on in your district. Yeah,
taking it seriously, looking into it, and that reflects on, I like that. That's a really good point too.
Yeah, so overall it's fun. Like I said, it gets easier. It's just a matter of getting that first one or two under your belt.
Yeah.
but it gets easier.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for all of this. Do you have any last thoughts?
No, I don't think so. Just again, thank you for asking me to come on and try to, I hope I can help even just one person, one
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will.
take the dive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for helping. I really appreciate all of your insights and your experiences, sharing your stories, and it's been really a blessing to me to be able to hear all of it. So
Yeah, and
uh,
thank you for your work and everyone at the office there too. You guys are great. You put up with all my emails and questions.
well, we're glad to do it, and we're glad to be able to have people like you working with us, because like I said before, we can't do it by ourselves. We need people to work together, and that's how we can continue on in this. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you again.
All right, well, thank you, and hopefully we'll get to see you guys again soon. And for today, that's it, and we'll just say goodbye now.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Frontline with FPM. For more information about the topics we discuss here, check out Family Protection Ministries at fpmca.org.